Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a message for you. Hey, beautiful people, what's going on? I hope you are doing swell on this fine Wednesday. Today is March 26, 2025. Just popping in with a quick little message. Well, quick is subjective, I suppose, to whomever is watching, but let's say a concise little message, hopefully. Yeah, hope your week's been treating you well. The Aries season is doing you right, and springtime is full of surprises, good ones at that. All right, let's see what we got today. The moon, and I saw a 10. What was that? And a 10 of wands. Unexpected struggle, or could be the end of the end of upheaval that has been mysterious. I'm getting a sense of like this feeling of, like one thing after the other. Like if it ain't one thing, it's the next type of energy where you can never quite know where the next, I don't know, like the next challenge, let's put it mildly, is going to come from. It seems sometimes almost come out of nowhere. So it could be like the conclusion of a season of relentless challenges that almost kind of took you by surprise, or where you never quite felt like you could prepare for what's next, but you kind of always had to be on guard. That's what I'm getting with these two cards. Interesting. And it could also be because with that type of experience can come this conditioning to always be defensive, to always have your guards up, or to be anticipating the other shoe to drop, so, and that's the energy of this fear. In the moon card, it definitely could be what's culminating, or what has been wrapped up could be the fear, that conditioning of fear and anxiety about what's next, what's coming around the corner, what don't I see coming, what's, what do I need to brace myself for, what impact should I brace for? Yeah, something about that. Interesting. I'm gonna start fresh and see where we go. I mean, although those energies are kind of intense, we got the moon, which is Pisces, and that's the last sign in the zodiac. And then we got the 10 of Wands, which is also a completion. So if there is any resonance with that energy, which I think many of us can resonate with that, unfortunately, the good news is that there's an ending, there's closure, there's completion, there's resolution, perhaps, if not already, certainly to look forward to. Maybe even not even knowing where certain, something about like sometimes not even knowing where certain stressors are even coming from. It's one thing to not know where to expect them from, but sometimes not even having an origin for for certain impacts. You know, I don't know if I'm saying that properly, but, you know, just kind of just taking, you know, taking the hits and keeping on moving. That's the Ten of Wands, really. You know, when you keep going, you keep pushing no matter what you encounter, but sometimes you don't even know where it's coming from, who it's coming from, how it reached you, again, what to look forward to or what to brace for next. But you just know that you got to pick yourself up and keep on moving. And although that level of resilience is commendable, you know, the residue, perhaps even of the PTSD, yeah, especially with the Ten of Wands, like the PTSD that it can leave behind is a whole nother, like a whole nother process of healing, to get used to not having to be used to struggle, or not having to be used to some impact of some unfavorable impact or circumstance or misfortune, burden, you know, like, interesting. So that makes sense, because that's where a lot of us could be at this time. Like I said, like almost reconditioning, unconditioning, deconditioning, however it makes sense to say, yourself from always expecting, you know, bracing for impact or bracing for the worst. And the other side of that, after the deconditioning, is now a new conditioning for great expectations, you know. So it's like interesting. Let me keep going. Let's see what we got here. Because sometimes it almost feels more secure in the obscurity to at least brace for the worst case scenario, before you allow yourself to project the best case, you know, lest you be disappointed. Oh, and it came back out. My God, let's see what's with that. As I'm saying, like, sometimes it's hard to let go. It's hard to actually perceive first and foremost, and then conceive of the fact that the struggle is over. But let's see where this is going. That moon definitely adds a veil of mystery to it all. So let's see. Ooh. Wow, look at this. The Four of Pentacles and the Three of Wands. The Three of Swords. Yeah, and this is trauma, like holding on to trauma, past heartbreak at that. But making it a very present circumstance, or making it a very present reality, I guess. But it could either be like holding on to the past or holding on to trauma. In the highest frequency, of course, especially as I'm speaking of it, it just could be the processing of that trauma and the acceptance of it as you are allowing the closure to happen, you know, or accepting the closure itself, and finding something new and more productive to build a foundation on, you know, to stabilize yourself, like new truths in a sense. New evidence, even with the Pentacles, it's like something concrete, material that would, yeah, like that's what I'm getting, which makes a lot of sense. I know in my own personal psychological healing and emotional healing, it's not holistically, well, I'll say it's not exclusively about dredging up the past and figuring out what got you to this point. It's also the part about finding the evidence well, really acknowledging the evidence of where you are in this present moment, the good things. In the pentacle form, it's like the stability that you currently do have, what you can actually rely on, what you can stake a claim in, what you've invested in that has yielded a return, a harvest, or some type of reward. Like sometimes, it's hard to see the forest for the trees when you got 10 wands, that literally that you have navigated through the energy of, that have, here it is, left the residue of heartbreak, disappointment, trauma, drama, PTSD, fear, to get to this place or accept yourself in this place of stability nonetheless, or despite those unfavorable, unsavory experiences. For many of us, especially that are at a point of closure for tough cycles and seasons, there's a lot to be grateful for, a lot to acknowledge, and to, it's more than just acknowledge. Like, I feel like celebrate, even though the card doesn't really give me that, but it's like there's a lot to, what's another word? Celebrate feels like kind of whimsical, but acknowledge doesn't feel like grand enough. It's like, yeah, like, yeah, maybe acknowledge is the key, and everything can literally build from that point. The awareness, the acceptance of it all, of just how grounded you actually are, especially when it's in reflection to all the reasons why you couldn't be, and maybe perhaps shouldn't be. To me, that actually is a point of celebration. Yeah. Let's see what else we got here. And then we got the Knight of Wands. What's with the Knight of Wands? Let me see. Knight of Cups. Interesting. What the heck is this? Knight of Wands. It's headed in one direction, and I'm feeling like toward... Okay, maybe this is about, as I'm speaking about the recognition and acknowledgement, this is about nurturing, allowing yourself to be kind of like nurtured back to security and confidence, and because I'm seeing the Knight of Wands that is kind of facing this Three of Swords, like trauma type of energy of the past, and maybe even tempted to retreat, to revisit it, I should say. But the Knight of Cups is kind of like a retreat, and it's almost like this Knight of Cups is offering to the Knight of Wands, love, understanding, compassion. So maybe this is like the note to really allow yourself the space and opportunity, as I was talking about earlier, the process of it all, the healing process. Like many of us sometimes feel like, given especially all of the heavy lifting that's been done to stabilize yourself, that there are certain things that you should just be over by now, you know, like that shouldn't have an effect, that shouldn't come up in your psyche or come up as an emotion or an impulse, you know, or even a temptation with this Knight of Wands here. But there's something about like being gentle with yourself. You know, that's what I'm seeing with these two knights kind of facing off, that where the Knight of Wands might want to regress into some state of maybe even toxicity. That can also be the Three of Swords, or it can be re-triggered. There it is, like can be triggered to old impulses that one would assume have been closed at this time, after a Ten of Wands. The Knight of Cups is countering with a cup of love, a cup of compassion, a cup of empathy, sympathy, nurturing, gentleness. Yeah. And it's something to be said about them both being knights, because it really speaks to a void in development. And sometimes we, like I said, we can be kind of hard on ourselves to have progressed at a certain pace by now. When we think of time, Four of Pentacles, that could definitely be a deep consideration of time. When we think of how much we maybe have invested in ourselves at this point to be better, to feel better, or to get over certain things. Maybe even considering how much we have let go versus what we've held on to. You know, there could even be some reflection of that here that still puts you in a position to feel like, to kind of put a pressure, here it is with the Ten of Wands, on yourself to be at a distinct point of so-called arrival, when maybe it's not necessary to burden yourself in such a way. It certainly might not be productive to the healing process overall, this leg of the process or the next one, because as I pointed out, it's like, it's one thing to get over all that you've been under, then it's another thing to become aware of that resilience and, you know, acknowledging it. Then it's another thing to decondition yourself from the defenses that you more or less acquired during those tougher times. So it's like you gotta be gentle. You gotta be gentle. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go to the next one. I'm gonna leave that big. Let's see what's coming up next. Gentle and forgiving of yourself primarily in this season. Yeah, because a lot of us have done our due diligence in making sure to forgive others, because we know ultimately it definitely affects us not to, you know, and affects us when we do in a positive way. But sometimes we are not so graceful with ourselves. You know, many times we aren't. We don't even realize the level of grace that we truly are craving, you know, for ourselves to continue to heal. Wow, and the Sun card. And there's the total opposite of the Moon, that illumination, that clarity that you allow to break through the obscurity. the healing process that is natural. That's what I'm getting here. Organic. That's going to happen regardless, you know, especially if you're if you're intentionally planting seeds, then it's undoubted, they're undoubtedly going to grow, especially when you're planting in the right intention, in the right soil, in the right season. You know, well, the right season is always the present, you know, and allowing the natural order of the universe to do what it does, you know, as you are a part of that organism, not separate from it. You know, it's really just like pretty much like I'm saying, to just allow time and destiny and nature more so, to run its course. This is almost like nurturing your inner child, you know, as you give yourself permission to be in a relentless state of healing, a perpetual state of nurturing. That's hard to do as humans, because we have so many commands on our lives to grow up, to get over, to do, you know, to expand, to advance, to prosper, that sometimes it doesn't even feel, you know, it's like kind of like watching a flower grow, you know, even as you look at yourself in the mirror. And I had that experience today where I had a first encounter, like a reflective encounter of myself having evolved from one space and time 2 times past that. And in a span of time that without the reflective aspect, I wouldn't have really even acknowledged. You know what I mean? It's like, especially given where I am at this point in the present moment, I wouldn't have naturally acknowledged the process of my progression, my evolution from the origin point that I engaged it to that midpoint and to now, you know. And I don't want to go into detail of how that came to be at this time, but I'm saying that to say that I can definitely speak to that experience of when you're just going through the motions, you know, doing your best to keep your head above water, to meet each challenge with dignity and honor, you know, and to be resilient from one stage to the next. That sometimes you don't really get to observe just how much you've grown, you know, and celebrate that, like smell the flowers type of thing. And there's so many distractions from that poignant part of that process, you know, the moon itself, you know, where there isn't so much clarity and so much light or enlightenment. Yeah, we got the 6 of Cups. This is some type of past energy once again. You know, that there is definitely light being shed on. I think kind of in the way that I'm speaking of, to see how much you've grown, to take note of that. This is the 6 of Cups, which sometimes again can be like childlike energy, certainly past season, you know, when you were in a much more vulnerable space, maybe even a more dependent space, more impressionable energy. When you kind of took life for however it was offered to you or projected to you. King of Pentacles. to now this independent position of making sense, literally sense, dollars and cents perhaps, or you know, materializing, not materializing, but what can I say, like making sense of your life experiences. That's one thing, but you know, almost turning your pain, perhaps this is just one expression, not altogether, but turning your pain into profit. And even if it's not material profit or financial gain, it's about turning it into something that is valuable, that is useful, that is a seed that can be sown and harvested for something, you know, for a more sustainable energy. But more than sustainable, with the King of Pentacles, it's about prosperity. So it's something about really harvesting the fruit of your labor. It's like not allowing all of this energy expended to go in vain on account of impatience or lack of self-love, disgrace even. I don't know why that's so, that came out so clear. Yeah, let's get another one here. Yeah, but the King of Pentacles is definitely prosperous and stable. Secure, self-secure, self-sufficient. Did I say grounded? I think I did. Practical. Wow. And then we got this Ace of Cups, which is like an overflow of, could be love, could be emotions. But again, like, it's beautiful though when you get into it, because this is the perfect mix, right? It's the Sun, it's the King of Pentacles, which is grounded energy, you know, earth energy, and then it's the Ace of Cups, which is the most purified essence of water that you can get in the deck. It's of a divine essence. So it's literally like fertile ground here that we're talking about. Is really about taking the best and maybe perhaps even the worst of the past, but still making something of it. And again, recognizing, acknowledging, and accepting what of the past has really groomed and shaped you to be all that you are. You know, like something that's therapeutic for me is the gratitude for all of the aspects of my life experience to date, because there's nothing that I could, you know, be regretful or remorseful about at this point that wouldn't have contributed to me being who I am right now. And I like who I am right now. I do. I really do. I love who I am right now, as a matter of fact, even as I'm still allowing myself, again, the liberty, the compassion, the space, an opportunity to continue to heal, to continue to mature and evolve, you know, to continue to open myself to this unconditional influx of love, which is not easy to do, whether it's of a divine origin or of a natural physical one. It's one of the hardest things to do, as a matter of fact. To open yourself up to trust. And maybe that's what we're talking about here. Especially with that Six of Cups, because this could be past relationships. Again, when you were most vulnerable. Sometimes it's hard to reconsider yourself in those positions of intimacy again, especially outside of yourself. Let me get one more here. The Eight of Cups. But I always see the Eight of Cups as a good sign, because it's certainly about leaving some things behind. Maybe leaving some corrupted emotions in the past for something far more favorable, as he's headed right into the Ace of Cups. Right into that promising, prosperous expression of love that is fulfilling. When you think the 8 with the ace is the 9, you know, that wish fulfillment experience, the thing that many desire to have, but not everyone is courageous to seek, you know, or to be available for. Because of what? Past experiences. So it's something here about really allowing yourself to process out the pain. You know, to full and sometimes that can blur into, I mean, I'm definitely hesitant to say it because it doesn't seem ideal, but sometimes that processing, just as this Knight of Cups is running into the Knight of Wands, sometimes the old and the new do confront one another or collide in an interesting way. Maybe they're even meant to, for that process to fully be completed or fully realized. And perhaps that's that mysterious point. Okay, I'm hearing it now. That's that mysterious, the mysterium of the Ten of Wands in the beginning that came back out, because it could be, you know, this deep consideration of just how much you have healed, or how ready and open and available you are for the new. You know, because some of us very much so recognize trigger points, or even potential trigger points. You know, like, am I redeemed from, you know, that aspect of myself enough to be available for a love that is as precious as the Ace of Cups could be, as nurturing as the sun, you know, as fulfilling and decadent and secure as the King of Pentacles. Somebody that wants to take care, that is sensitive, that is generous, a generous lover. And of course, these are all the things that we would call in naturally if you asked, you know, that one would call in for themselves. But it's a different thing when you're actually faced with that opportunity, that invitation, that proposition, that proposal, and you haven't really quite flexed in the new muscle of what's the new muscle? Like, it's like a new muscle of, I guess, love. You know, it could be the new muscle of love. I get it. I don't know if I'm explaining it right, and it may not be for everybody, but I can so relate to this. When you haven't really, it's like, you know what you are resilient from. You know what you have, you know your threshold of pain, so to speak, up until this point. But it's kind of hard to know your threshold of love, per se, you know, or lack of, you know, or limitlessness, unconditionality, so to speak, of love, if you haven't really been tested in that regard yet. So I can see why there's this like back and forth, and the mysticism with the moon and all that, because it's like, you know what you can what you have handled, you know your strength, but maybe even, do you know your weakness at this point? You know, and maybe that's the mystical fear. It's like, with this feeling of, you know, vulnerability, it's like, I know what I can stand up against, but you've built up such a strength and a resilience that here it is with this Knight of Wands. It's almost like a fear, or perhaps an anxiety, you know, maybe not so intense of an expression, but definitely a thoughtfulness about what would break down those walls justifiably, you know, first and foremost, and or unrighteously, you know, because the happy ending is, you know, for this flood of love to be allowed to come in, to saturate, to purify even, and it be a positive experience, right? The Eight of Cups is hopeful for that projection, or they wouldn't leave behind what they've experienced in the first place to go and pursue it. But there still is this hint of apprehension, I guess, to say, when you are at the threshold of that level of vulnerability again, or perhaps even more so than you've ever been before, and you're not really quite sure of your personal security within it. That's what it is. Because you can't, as I often say about the Eight of Cups, there is no guarantee what you're going to go and see. You just have to go. You just have to experience. You just have to trust, believe, receive in this case. And if we're talking about relationships or being open for love after perhaps a season of unfortunate events or unsavory experiences, oh yeah, we're talking about a great feat for a human, a human spirit, which again is why it's necessary to be graceful with yourself and gentle with yourself through that process, and allow for nature and the divine to run its course properly with the least resistance as you possibly can manage to have. Two of Wands, that came up first thing in the last message about having a plan, a sense of direction, a determination, having made a decision. What's he deciding on? Let's see. Maybe even on your outlook. Wow, and here's the what? This is the Queen of Pentacles. About what matters in your life. What has value and what doesn't. What also, with the Queen of Pentacles, it's about being selective in a sense. Is that the word I want? Sort of, kind of being selective about what you will accept, given that she's the receptive energy. Like, all money ain't good money type of thing, but every offer is not a good one. You know what I mean? Whatever we're talking about here, like still maintaining or perhaps having new values altogether from what you're used to, and that being a part of your own self-nurturing, you know, and self-care to establish a boundary or a baseline and be pretty firm on that for your own security. I feel like that's an affirming place to be if you can resonate with that mentality. And I think that that's the part of recognition and acknowledgement, you know, that many of us have not fully come to clarity, or, you know, like fully established for ourselves. Just like I was saying before, like the progression of my evolution in the sense that I observed today. It's like you don't even sometimes realize like how stable your self-worth has become over the years, to the point where that's really all that's needed foundationally, is to know your value, to know what is in alignment with your greatest good, and to accept nothing less. I feel like that kind of eliminates that sense of insecurity or uncertainty about your vulnerability, especially with whom you trust it with, you know, or however you trust yourself. If this foundation is true, then that's really the greatest point of personal security against anything that would be an intrusion or an imposition against an imposition on your personal safety and security, emotionally, mentally, physically, materially, however it is, you name it. You know what I mean? Like that type of security system in place really does do the work for you, I think. But again, sometimes we don't realize how strong and stable and secure we've become, because there hasn't really been much time in seasons leading up to this present moment to fully engage that truth. Like, damn, I really, you know, like my standards are supreme, you know, like, no, I'm not just taking any old thing. I'm not taking any old offer. I'm not taking any old proposition. No, I don't want your number when you hollering at me on the street all wild. You know what I mean? Like, there's a certain, and that's real primitive, you know, but I was trying to bring it back down to something so practical that you get what I'm trying to say. It's like, maybe once upon a time certain things were acceptable, you know, but now it's time to really recognize just how, like, the what's the right phrase, like the the interest on your, here we go again, on your stock price, so to speak, and how it has risen significantly. The margin, maybe I should say, on your stock. I don't know, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like, what's the saying? Yesterday's prices are not today's prices, or vice versa, however it go. Yeah. And it's also being unapologetic for that as well. Wow, with the justice. It's all fair game. Is what is deserving, what has been earned, you know, fairly through hard work, dedication, healing, investment in your own self-worth and stability and personal security. You know, it's like this is justified to feel a certain way about yourself, and to assert that, you know. So therefore, in that assertiveness, there leaves much less room for doubt and uncertainty and insecurity about that value, you know, what it really truly is worth, particularly what you truly are worth. And also, it's something I'm trying to get to. It's not just about like what it's worth to others, but like how appreciated, and that word is so loaded from what we're talking about here, but like how much your value has appreciated over time, over trials, over tribulations, over challenges, over seasons of trauma and drama and unrest and betrayal, perhaps, and just the unsavory aspects of life that can either make or break you. This is an opportunity in this message, if not already, for you to understand that it has made you in a very magnificent way. And when you're made, like, you know, like built for it, tough like that, like made from, you know, made of magnificence, is really, it's kind of like, what's the word, like cognizantly dissonant to feel like there's anything that could destroy that, you know, that could truly be a detriment to that truth. It's human, especially when you're in that transitional period of still healing and still coming to terms with just how resilient you are and how, in some cases, brilliant, you know, that you are, and allowing the, you know, the spirit to affirm that in the evidence of your waking life. Is still human, which is the reason for the call for compassion and grace. But I'm telling you that what it exemplifies ultimately is a dissonance, because when it comes down to it, you'll see far less evidence, if any at all, for those fears, you know, or even the triggers that resonated once upon a time, than you do that new and improved expression of you as it's been refined in real time. You know, like the two don't really align. If anything, the resilience of the past that you have exhibited contradicts the detriment, you know, that it could have ever really truly caused in the first place. Because as I said before, if not for all of it, you wouldn't be who you are today in real time, in real form. what else we got. A couple more. Wow, but this is the past. Like, this is, again, this is that PTSD that I'm talking about, like, reflective. But this is the higher vibration, I think, of it all, because sometimes I don't see this as, you know, it has different inflections depending on what we're talking about. But given all that I've been saying and the cards at hand, it's still pointing toward all that has been overcome. And again, you know, this is the moment of completion, you know, endings. You know, endings. I think 10 is completion, the 9 is endings, I think, or am I flip-flopping that? Either way, it's like the worst is behind you. And for many of us has been for a little while now. All that has been left is a realization of the present, you know, and again, to acknowledge and accept your resilience, like to keep looking back at all that has been incurred and all that has transpired is not what forwards the future. You know, it just builds the case for how strong and stable you are to still be standing nonetheless. You know, so something about that here. Definitely worst case scenario is, again, cautioning allowing yourself to dwell too much in the misfortunes of past experiences and, you know, and regrets and remorse and looking back unfavorably as if, you know, you've done something wrong or something could have been different. Of course, it always could have been. But if you have your choice to do it all over again to get right where you are, would you? For me, it's yes, I would. Will I do it all over again? No. That cycle of struggle is indeed complete, you know. However, I would if it meant that I could be in this place of self-awareness, security, blossoming more and more every day, confidence in my own skin, brilliance, spiritual liberation, self-love, you know, unconditionally, reverence for the past. And I'm not saying that I'm perfectly healed. You know, like I said, there are moments that I'm still capturing in real time, like, oh, wow, okay, that was a transition. You've come a long way, which only for me makes me thoughtful about, you know, what's next, you know. And so that's my challenge of just being present with I guess that's that point of acknowledgement and celebration, and that I'm trying to find another word for, because that is my challenge of being right here right now and really settling in with who I am in this moment, you know, before I start charting new territory or creating new adventures and, you know, jumping off into whatever next discovery. And it's never ending as far as I'm concerned. But what is definitely fulfilling and empowering is to celebrate where you are, to celebrate where I am in this moment. And of course, that's much easier said than done, as I can't even find myself to settle in on the word celebration itself, you know, to make a case for it, as if there needs to be one to celebrate yourself, you know. Again, just me being vulnerable with where I am. Yeah, and look at this, the Seven of Swords. And to me, that's like the energies that would want to distract you into, and it could be your own, your own mental pitfalls. As I'm saying, like, there's definitely something here about not being deceived or distracted to linger in the past or to be dragged back into some old cycle, a old debilitating one at that, where there's self-pity and self-doubt and uncertainty and distrust for self and maybe even for others. The deception is that there's some sense of security there, which is very false. Like, it's a false sense of security to be more closed and more guarded and cautious and maybe even a bit paranoid than it is to be completely open and free and vulnerable, open to intimacy, available for love, available to just allow others to experience you, to love you or hate you, but just to allow there to be an honest and unbridled experience of you that is not constrained or confined by your own personal judgments, before it's even expressed. There's something about that there as well. It's definitely a deception, though, and a trap, an entrapment to be stuck in a place of self-sabotage and self-pity, and we know the energies. We know the energies that are not forwarding. That's part of the thing, is that we know the energies all too well, and that part of paranoia, so to speak, or just like an apprehension, maybe even a little twinge of fear, is to not be dragged back into that vulnerable space, because it doesn't feel good to be insecure, to feel like you're not appreciated for who you are, to feel like you have to make concessions for your natural essence, or worse, to hide, the essence of who you are for fear of rejection or condemnation or judgment or whatever. It's like that fear can sometimes be quite heavy and prevalent, even when you have the best intentions to be open, like the sheer thought of being dragged back into something too familiar in all the wrong ways is daunting. It can be daunting at times, but remember where we started. We started at the 10 of Wands, and it came back again, but ultimately it's about allowing cycles to close naturally, as they either already are, or already have, or already are. Yeah. Without any pressure or any lofty expectations on yourself to accelerate that process, or to move beyond that natural process, or to do anything more than what you feel is divinely prescriptive for you to do. And I feel that so heavy right now. Yeah. Here's the inner conflict, but the Queen of Swords cuts right through that, and I was going to say, like, there can be so many influences to contradict where you feel you're naturally gravitating, or naturally evolving too, to either make you feel like you're moving too slow, or you're moving too fast, or you're not moving at all, you know. But one thing about the Queen of Swords is that her discernment is sharp. You know what's best for you. You know what all that you've been through. You know the truth of yourself. You know the truth of the matter of you, you know. And that's the point of trustworthiness that is solid. If you don't know what to trust or who to trust at this point in time, I feel like the universal invitation is really for us to trust ourselves. Especially, like I said, if you're one that's been sowing seeds for prosperity's sake, that's been doing the work, as we say, to evolve beyond the past, to grow, to mature, to advance. You know, if you can't trust you, who the hell can? And there will be influences that will want to contradict that personal security and try to drag you back into a time where you weren't so certain of yourself, so confident, so aware of your worth and value. But just don't let them. The Queen of Swords knows exactly what to engage and what to dismiss. Let's see. Wow. Wow. That's like double confirmation right there. Wow. Like, this is saying, like, the Queen of Swords, with all of her brilliance and intelligence and intellectual prowess, is even that much more tapped in, because there's a source of divine enlightenment that she's also tapped into that is irrefutable. That's what that is. A divine certainty. And I'm feeling this as almost like an affirmation or a confirmation from the divine of the dependability of your own discernment. So that means knowing that when you're still in the healing phase, knowing when you need a little bit more time, knowing when you're ready, knowing when it's safe to give a little more, open up a little more, knowing when it's wise to conserve or, you know, protect your energy, knowing when it's safe to trust outside of yourself, and knowing when it's wise to resist, you know, or to set certain boundaries, hearing the logic of circumstances, you know, as it's presented to you, and knowing how to, even internally, at knowing how to sift through illusions and deceptions, and, you know, even sometimes that we encounter within our own body. Like, I mean, come on. It's like the Queen of Swords, and it's like, you know how to receive, like, you know how to receive a high level of information, and again, enlightenment. This is like, what can I say that is? It's like, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's like a high level of intel. Yeah, it's like a high level of intel, supreme level of intel. You know how to transmit that through your personal conduction of truth, and you know how to assert it, you know, where it makes sense and where it is necessary, like to activate that information, that enlightenment, that intuitiveness. So with that, again, with that level of security, literally that level of intel, this is like what they call, like, what you call it, like, classified, yeah, like classified intel or information. What what can deceive you, deter you, or disturb you? No challenge exists to do such a thing in this era of existence. And that is definitely something worth acknowledging and celebrating. Wow. All right, well, I'm going to leave it there. Definitely something powerful about these double swords here. You got the vision, you got the knowledge, you have the introspection, you have the perspective, you got everything that you need. Half the battle in this world is seeing through the fog, internally and externally, like literally piercing through the illusions. So with that faculty in your arsenal, no need to worry at all. The divine will definitely assist with the rest, with pleasure at that. All right, well, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Until next time, as always, I leave you with peace.